Welcome. Today's episode is about sellers. All right, so sellers, if you're a seller, well, what is a seller? Well, a seller has goods in a marketplace. So if you're a party with goods in a marketplace, you're a seller, right? And what you're looking to do is you're looking to offer whatever it is that you have to buyers. Now, there are various types of sellers that exist, and you've probably seen each and every one of them within some capacity. You have your retail sellers, so your big box stores that are selling what products they actually have, such as, let's say, a department store or a grocery store, from wholesalers. And what wholesalers are, they may be the middleman that actually, let's say, purchases a particular product from a vendor. They hold on to it and then they essentially sell it to those big box retailers, right? And then you also have your aftermarket seller, so someone that may have a used product, right? You have a used car dealership, you have someone that's a private party looking to sell a vehicle. Those are your aftermarket sellers, right? And so all of these different types of sellers exist out there, and they all have different motivations for what they actually do. So, why is it that you would actually want to sell something? Now, this might sound like a dumb question, but in asking questions, we actually get answers. And sometimes when we ask good questions, we get really good answers. So, the whole idea of looking to sell something is you have abundance. You have an abundance of value. And usually, when you have an abundance, there are things that you do not need, right? So, when you don't need something, why hold on to it when you could offer it in exchange for something else that you actually want, right? So that's why we actually have sellers. That's why we actually have something called the market. So within this market, we have buyers and we have sellers. So why sell? You have an abundance of value. You have an excess and you're looking to see what you can get in exchange for that excess, right? And if you're a buyer, you have a lack of value somewhere. You're actually looking for something in which you can actually gain value for that maybe you feel you don't have right now. So that's why that market actually exists. And the reason that everyone appreciates that market is it can satisfy desires. If you're looking to get rid of something or if you're looking to acquire something, right? So that's why the markets actually exist. It provides an environment in which we can all reach some type of equilibrium or balance within what it is that we want and what it is that we need, right? So what does a sale actually need? So if you're looking to sell something, what do you actually need? Well, you need three things. The first thing is that you need something of value. So this actually helps create the market because you have a supply of something that other people actually want, right? And then next, you need customers or you need buyers. And these buyers create the demand within the market. So you have your supply and you have your demand. Now, to actually make a sale happen, you need to get a buyer with a seller, and you need to have something called negotiating terms. This is essentially what's referred to as a transaction. And a transaction essentially needs the conditions governing the exchange. And what we're normally used to seeing is something called price, right? So usually that's a big motivator, but it's not necessarily the only motivator. Now, once we actually have everything we actually need for a sale, what does the sale itself actually require? So the process we just talked about as far as having supply, as far as having demand, and as far as having negotiated terms, those are the elements of the sale itself. But we actually need some fundamental things called closing and closure. So what I just referred to as far as that sales process, that represents closing. And this is usually that logical process that we follow to execute a transaction. But that's not the only thing that's required because we also need something called closure. And what closure represents is that emotional release, if there's any actually involved, to say that, you know what, I can actually afford to get this, so I'm going to move forward and actually get it. Or I'm not so emotionally tied to that item that I'm selling that I can't let it go. So if we're not able to pass these aspects of closure on both the buyer side and the seller side, the sale never happens, right? And these are the reasons that a buyer or a seller may actually have that stops them from moving forward with a sale or a transaction. So the closing piece, we talked a little bit about that. You need supply and demand. You need the market of interested buyers, and you need an inventory of value. And when you actually look at what closing actually looks like, let's say within a market, you have a spectrum and it has two sides to it. On one side, you actually have a free market, and on the other side, you have a monopoly. Now, in speaking with my grandmother about the subject, who again, we're sort of two trains of thought, the free market itself, after some deliberation on it, really represents all of the options that exist for you to actually get or purchase or acquire something that you actually want. So if there's only one option, it's very restricted, and you might have what's called a monopoly. And the monopoly means you can only get it from this one place, and you have to agree to the terms of, let's say, that one door. And that door may be open and may be closed. So they may be looking to negotiate, but that price may be set, and there's nothing you can actually do about it, right? So that would represent the monopoly. Very, very few options actually exist. Or on the other side, you might actually have a free market that has a number of different options. So if you go to one place and you don't agree to the item or the price, you can go someplace else very, very easily. And so that full spectrum really represents what the market actually looks like. Is it a free market or is it a monopoly? Now, depending on what you're looking for, those conditions may actually exist. So the whole aspect of closing is you need to find what it is you actually want, and you need to have the ability or the access to actually acquire it, right? And there could be some other restrictions that could be there as well, but that really represents what the market can offer you, okay? Now, when you move into closure, remember we have both buyers and sellers operating on this other side. And closure really is more tied on the emotions. And let's see, if a seller has enough motivation to release or move on from whatever they're holding on to, then they are able to sort of, get through the closure process and the closure phase. But if they can't, then that means whatever they have to offer never makes it on the market, okay? And the same thing on the buyer side. The buyer is actually, looking for something, and maybe they're just really restricted, or they feel it as though they're restricted by what their requirements are, that might actually stop them. Maybe they're looking and looking and looking, but they're like, you know what? I want to buy this item at 90% off. So I'm only willing to pay 10% of what's actually worth. They may have a very, very difficult time finding what they're looking for. And until they're able to get past whatever is kind of slowing them down or stopping them, in this case, their rules or their requirements, they're not going to find what they're looking for. So that's essentially what you have to get past when you're talking about closure. And then sort of going along with that, this idea of maybe a fair offer might be something, let's say the buyer has their eye set on. But on the seller side, it might be something, a little deeper than that. As far as, it may not necessarily be the fair offer so much. It might be something that is tied a little bit deeper as far as, hey, we lived in this house for 30 years. We're not looking to get rid of it because it brings, so many memories and everything else. But something that can create an opening and an opportunity there is if they see a fair offer or a fair exchange offering that property or that house to another family that's looking to, take it as their own and live in it for another 30 years, right? So just kind of seeing how whatever it is that you're actually offering and how it's actually going to be used and how it's actually going to be appreciated, that's one thing that can actually help with the closure piece, that that, okay, this is going to a good home, so now I'll actually release it knowing that that's actually going to happen. And that's something that can be very, very difficult to overcome. So it's very important that, you have an understanding and sort of a feeling of trust and respect for, both sides of the party, buyers and sellers, both sides. And the terms in which they decide upon really dictates, if something is actually going to come to a close or not. So the closing piece is just going through that process, but the closure piece is something a little bit more that's tied with emotions on both the buyer and seller to see if they can actually come to an agreement. Now, what are the best sales? Well, the best sales happen when the buyers and the sellers win. So if there's only one side that wins and the other side feels that they lost, that's not a good sale, because everyone needs to come out not just receiving what they're looking for, but feeling as though they've actually received a fair offer for what it is they've put up on the table. And we all want to feel as though we received more value than was actually exchanged, but this is something that's actually relative. So it's important that you know what it is that you need when you're actually pursuing whatever it is that you want or whatever it is you're going for. And I believe this really ties into the experience. So as far as what I look for when I'm looking for an experience when I'm actually either buying or selling, is there needs to be a mutual exchange or trust that continues even after the sale is completed. I believe if you can actually do that, then you've come a far way, and I see both the buyer and the seller winning in that case because there's a mutual respect there, and it's not as though, hey, the sale happens and then like we just pretend, not to know each other. There's a bond that's created as far as that experience. So that's something I, believe really, really important for both sides to actually win. And so if you're a motivated seller, I want to make sure that you actually know that I'm a motivated buyer. And with that, again, I love actually giving offers and seeing if I can help, address challenges and solve problems. And usually you have to get through some of those before you can actually get to a closed transaction. But in any case, I always enjoy the opportunity to work through that and seeing what we can actually put together and what can come together from it. So if you're interested in receiving a fair offer for whatever it is that you have, whatever it is you're looking to sell, let me know. So you can do that very easily by giving me a call at 571-732-2220. Again, the name is Etzel, and just feel free to give me a call anytime at 571-732-2220. Hope to hear from you soon, and hope you enjoyed this episode. All right, bye.